Hey everyone, it is good to be with you today. It is September the 2nd on Read Through the Word. We are going to jump into our lesson right at the first of our reading today, which is 1 Chronicles 5:18 through 26. And we're talking about the tribes east of the Jordan. This might be a little unfamiliar to you if you are just joining us or you joined us late in the game. If you joined us past March 10th, Numbers 33, chapter 33, this story is not going to be a story that you're familiar with. And I'm just going to give like the Reader's Digest version. But when you circle back around and you get to next March, this story will probably come back to you because I've said all along we need to pay attention to these people on the east side of the Jordan. If you remember, the east side of the Jordan were the Reubenites, the Gadites, and the half tribe of Manasseh. And Reuben and Gad were sons of Jacob, and Manasseh was a son of Joseph, who before Israel or Jacob died, took him as his son as far as the blessings were concerned. And if you noticed here, let's see, is it this translation? I don't think the NLT says this. But it talks about, in one of the translations, it mentions that Reuben is the oldest son of Jacob, which the oldest son should be referred to as the heir. He should have been the one to get the double portion because he was the first son. But if you remember from the story, Reuben did not get the first son blessing because of his behavior with his father's concubine. And we'll just keep it at G-rated, the G-rated version of the story. Yes, so he was knocked off the hierarchy, the family hierarchy, and was not able to get the double portion that normally goes to the firstborn child. So when they got to the land allotment, or getting ready to cross over to the Jordan, to cross the Jordan to the promised land, Reuben but the tribe of Reuben and Gad and Manasseh half tribe had a conversation with Moses and said, hey, we want to stay on this side. It looks good to us and we would rather stay over here. And it was a beautiful land. It was well nourished. It was a place where you could grow crops and have livestock and all of that. And you could have a prosperous future on the east side of the Jordan, which, okay, that sounds great. And I'm not saying God was not going to bless them on the east side or God wouldn't take care of them, but they were going to be distant from those that were on the west side. Those were that crossed over to the promised land, were going to have that connection of family, that hey, I'm going to war, I need your help. Not like family reunions, like let's call everybody together and get some chicken and macaroni and cheese and casseroles. And I don't see that they did that, but they had each other's support. And Moses, or we're going to have each other's support. So Moses in this conversation says, yes, you can have this land, but you need to go over with your brothers and fight for them and with them until they get their territory and their allotments. And they did. They went over, they supported their brothers, they supported the family. And as you know, they did not wipe everybody out. That's a whole other story, and I don't even want to go there. But they did that. They came back, and this is where they lived. So here they are. There's been a couple occurrences that happened on the east side of the Jordan. But this is another time where it proves that they really should have, even though they weren't going to get, Reuben would have gotten, had he not had the indiscretion with the concubine, he would have gotten first choice and prime choice of the land of promise. But because he didn't, and he wasn't going to, and some of the commentaries agree with me, they stayed over here on this side. And they also trusted their own sight and their own thinking. But anyways, so this again, here we see them, they're separated from their people. And this is one of those times where, once again, had they been in with the people, with their people, maybe this wouldn't have happened. I don't know. Well, they were all going to get taken over anyways, because this was part of the judgment. But anyways, so here we go. Distance matters. Location matters. Location matters. Because what happened with these people is very similar to what happened with the people on the west side of the river. And also, if we're not careful, happens to us. The further that we get, the further that they got from God, the temple, the people, all of that, the further that they got from Him, the more distance that was put between them and God and the people, the more likely they were to start taking up the customs of those that were the inhabitants of that land. And we saw that same thing happening on the west side of the river. So I'm not saying that did anything different than the people on the west side. However, they're not over there with their people. That's my point. Distance makes a difference. Location matters. We need to stay close to God. We need to stay close to God. Because when we have distance, distance can eventually lead to departure. Completely turning our back on the Lord and what He has set for us. And the more distance the more time, the more distance, the further that we get, then we turn away from what we know that's true. And we know that's what right. We start to think, well, what they're doing isn't so bad. Really? Okay. Then we decide the world's not too terribly awful. Okay, well, I'll still worship. I'll still go through the motions, but I want it the world's way too. Location matters. Location matters. And here's the thing, is if we don't deal with it, if we don't stay in a close proximity to the Lord, spiritually speaking, the world's way is going to become normal and comfortable. And the distance is going to become comfortable. And we're not going to want to make the effort to go back. We're going to start listening to the enemy when he says, yeah, you've gone too far. You can't be reached. I told you all that Jesus stuff was nothing. Told you all that Holy Spirit stuff was nothing. And that reading the Bible, that's no good. You get comfortable in that distance and you don't want to travel back and you don't want to make the effort and you wonder if you will even be received back. But here's the thing. If you drift, don't drift too far and don't stay too long. Bottom line. If you drift, don't drift too far and don't stay gone too long. Pay attention to those nudges. Pay attention to the warnings. Pay attention to the messages. Pay attention. Because what's in here that's true and right doesn't go away, even with distance. It gets quiet maybe, but it doesn't go away. And it doesn't take long to reactivate it. And you are never, and I am never too far away. I'm never far out of His reach. That distance, no matter how great we think that chasm is, it is not so far that the Lord can't reach us. There is no distance so great that I can't return to a right standing and a right relationship with the Lord. Never. So, location matters. If you have to drift, don't drift too far and don't drift too long. Go back to the truths that are in your heart. Those are the right truths. Don't listen to the lies that distance doesn't matter, because it does. And that the world is actually an okay place, because it's actually not. They lie to us all the time. Media is getting worse and worse. Social media, TV media, print media, all of that. Mainstream media is telling us one thing when God says something completely different. And so we're actually going to be going against the stream We really are now anyways, but it's going to get worse. Because I've read the whole thing. Many of you have too. And it's going to get worse. But then again, it's going to get really good at one point. So let's just pay attention to our distance. Well, I'll see you tomorrow and read through the Word.